Chapter 1. Bridget Taylor sat quietly waiting for her plane to taxi to the gate in Lewiston, Idaho. Both of her parents were beside her, and they were all seeing her twin, Kaya, for the first time in a couple of months. None of them had met Kaya's new husband, Glenn, yet, but they'd heard so much about him, it was as if they'd known him for years. As soon as they were at the gate, Bridget, who was on the aisle, sprang to her feet to pull down all the carry-ons she and her parents had put in the overhead bin, while her mother got slowly to her feet. "I think airplane seats get smaller every time I fly," her mother complained. Bridget almost said, "Maybe you get bigger," but she thought better of it. She was going to control her tongue and have a nice trip if it killed her. "Kaya said she got us a cabin at the River's End Ranch, where Glenn works, and there will be a car here to pick us up." Sending a car to pick us up like she's too important to come herself. Dad shook his head. "What is the world coming to when you can't pick up your parents from the airport for your own wedding reception?" "I'm sure she had reasons, Dad." Bridget threw her bag over her shoulder and waited in the long line to get off the plane. She wouldn't admit it out loud, but she'd actually missed her sister. When they were together, they tended to fight, unless they were involved in some sort of shenanigans, but that didn't mean they didn't love each other. Why, Bridget had even bought a new set of shrimp forks for each of them before she'd gotten on the plane. How could a sister not love a new set of shrimp forks? "You're going to be on your best behavior," her mother hissed in her ear. "Do you hear me, Bridget Elaine?" Bridget wrinkled her nose. "How come I got stuck with Bridget Elaine and Kaya got Kaya Cheyenne? You love her more than me, don't you?" She carefully kept her back to her mother to hide her smirk as she heard her mother's sharp intake of breath. "Don't you start with me. I had to get up at the but crack of dawn to fly here for this reception, and I'm not in a good mood." "Who has a reception so far from everyone they love?" "Only your sister." Bridget didn't bother to respond, recognizing the rant for what it was. Her mother was tired and sore after flying all day, and she was expressing her frustration with that by complaining about Kaya. Their mother loved them both desperately, but in their family, love was shown in a way that wouldn't be perfectly acceptable in a normal family. They proceeded to baggage claim as soon as they made it off the plane, and Bridget finally breathed deeply for the first time in hours. The flight from DFW had seemed to take forever, and she was ready to be settled somewhere. Besides, the germs on planes were killers. Who wanted to think about that? Not her. Bridget was a nurse for a small family practice in Denton, Texas. She'd started out working in nursing homes, but they just hadn't worked well for her, though her best friend, Jenny, was very happy in the nursing home where she'd worked since before graduation, first as a nurse's aide, and now as a full-fledged nurse. Secretly, Bridget hoped that some of her sister's luck would rub off on her, and there would be a handsome, intelligent man waiting to take them to the ranch. They would fall in love on the way there, and spend the entire week in one another's company, completely unaware of anyone around them. At the end of the week, he would tell her he couldn't live without her, and she would only go back to Texas for long enough to pack up her apartment and work out a 2 weeks' notice. Then it would be back to Idaho, land of mountains and lakes and Bigfoot. Bridget wasn't so sure about the Bigfoot thing, but Kaya had reassured her it was true. Of course she hadn't believed Kaya about anything since she had told her that all men named Matt were perfect for being romance heroes. Why Matt? Even Kaya didn't know. At baggage claim, instead of a handsome man, they found Kaya, and Bridget hurried to her sister to hug her, while getting a shrimp fork out of her pocket and concealing it in her hand. Mid-hug, she stabbed her sister in the bottom with her shrimp fork, just as she felt her own stab on the shoulder. The sisters looked at each other and laughed hysterically, grimacing as they saw the look their mother was giving them. "Where is he? I have to see this perfect man you married." Bridget looked around for someone who looked like he was with Kaya. Kaya made a face. "I never said he was perfect. Just that he's perfect for me. See the difference?" She brandished a shrimp fork warningly as she asked. Bridget rolled her eyes, stepping away from her sister so her parents could hug her. Is he here? Kaya shook her head. Nope. He's at the ranch today. There was a big group wanting to go on a trail ride, and his boss needed another man. He was planning on coming until the very last minute. Bridget was careful not to show her disappointment. She was very curious about her sister's new husband. You actually drove? It's miraculous. So tell us about this cabin we're staying in. Kaya ignored her sister's comments about her driving. I got you the barefoot bungalow. You're going to love it. It overlooks the river, and it's just gorgeous. No one has said, but I'm pretty sure Kelsey named it. She's the Bigfoot hunter I told you about. Kaya hugged their mother, who was more Bridget's height than Kaya's. Bridget the midget is what Kaya liked to call her. Of course Kaya was of Amazonian proportions, and Bridget was compact-sized, so it made sense that Kaya would see her as a midget. After their parents had hugged Kaya, Bridget linked her arm with her sister's. Any eligible men on the ranch? Kaya grinned, a mischievous look coming into her eye. I think you should meet Kevin. He's handsome, sweet, and very eligible. Kevin, huh? Tell me all about him. I'll do better. I'll introduce you. He'll be at the reception. I can't wait to meet him. Is he a good friend of Glenn's? Kaya bit her lip, seeming to hide a laugh. They're not super close. He just moved to the ranch a short while ago, but he's a good guy. I'll look forward to it. Their dad gave Bridget her suitcase, and she took it by the handle to pull it behind her. So what is there to do on this ranch we're staying at? Anything fun? Kaya laughed softly. There's something to do every day. There's an old west town to explore, four-wheelers to ride around on, horses to ride, mountains to climb, rivers to raft, and so very much more. Seriously, you could move here and never leave the ranch. She frowned. It's cooler now though, so no rivers to raft, and the pool is closed. Maybe we'll get some snow while you're here. They're not hiring a nurse, are they? Bridget asked. It sounded so amazing she never wanted to leave. And despite how she and her sister behaved at times, she would love to have her around. She'd missed her since she moved to Idaho. You know, I think they are. The old nurse, Emily, announced she was planning on retiring last week. Wait, why is there a nurse? Kaya glanced over her shoulder to ensure their parents were ready as she started toward the car. There's a first aid station right there on the ranch. Mainly for minor stuff. If an injury is serious, they care flight the person here to Lewiston. I don't know how busy the nurse is kept, but it's nice to know there's one on the property. There are so many dangerous activities. Bridget's mind was spinning. It wasn't where she'd seen herself when she'd decided to go to nursing school, but it seemed right. Very right. Maybe she'd talk to the ranch owners about it. Tell me more about Kevin. Kaya laughed, shaking her head. Just wait to meet him. Once they were in the car, Bridget leaned back and closed her eyes. Their father had commandeered driving the thing, claiming that he'd never trusted Kaya's driving, which suited Kaya nicely. She hated driving, though Lewiston was not nearly as bad as Dallas traffic. Kaya and Bridget both sat in the back, together. Neither of them were stabbing the other with their shrimp fork, but both had them at the ready. Why own a shrimp fork if you didn't use it to stab your sister? Asterisk. Wake up, midget. We're at the ranch. Kaya's voice was insistent. Bridget thought about slapping her sister away, but instead she groaned and opened her eyes. She'd needed that short nap. Well, she'd needed a long nap, but there hadn't been time for that. She peered out the window for the first time at a big sign that read, River's End Ranch. Kaya was practically bouncing with her excitement to show the place to her family. The diner's over there. Kelsey runs the place, and she's pregnant. She's not showing much, but pretend she is. It'll make her day. Bridget nodded. She was all about making the natives happy. You said a family owns this place? Yes. There are 6 siblings. 4 brothers, and the 2 youngest are twin girls. They're identical, but they work hard to not look alike. You know what I mean. Bridget knew exactly what her sister meant. When the 2 of them were little, their mother had dressed them alike, even though they had truly never been similar. Kaya had always been tall and fair, and Bridget was petite with brunette hair. No, they hadn't favored at all, but still they dressed very differently in high school, not really even wanting people to know they were sisters, let alone twins. Kaya gave directions to their father until he parked in front of a cabin. Bridget bounced out of the car, glad she'd gotten her nap and thrilled to be there. Is there a hot tub? I could use a hot tub about now. There is. It's on the back porch. Come on, and I'll show you around. This is where Liz, May, and I stayed when I came here for the first time. 20 minutes later, Bridget was settled into a small bedroom with a private bath. She sighed contentedly. She was used to having an apartment to herself, but if she had to share quarters with her parents, this was how she wanted to do it. She walked out into the living room, which was basically the same big room as the kitchen. It was a very open floor plan. I approve of your choice, Kaya. You did something right. I do a lot of things right, Kaya said, wrinkling her nose at her sister. Don't make me stab you with a shrimp fork. You may have fans who think you're something special, but I knew you before you were potty trained. Think about it. Bridget walked into the living room to sit with her parents. What are the plans now? I'm going to fix dinner for all of us tonight. And to make numbers even, I texted Glenn and asked that he invite Kevin to supper. Bridget perked up at that. Sounds good. Has he responded? He said he'd be there. Kaya stood, rubbing the back of her neck. I'm going to ride home with Glenn. I'll draw you a map to get to our house, but really, it's just across the highway. Very easy. Write it down for me, their dad told her. And are we going to meet this man you married before supper? Kaya nodded. He's supposed to be here in about 20 minutes to take me home. You can meet him then. Bridget was honestly thrilled for her sister. As much as they fought, there was no one she loved more. How long were you on the ranch before you met Glenn? About 15 minutes. We stopped at the diner before coming into the cabin, and he was there getting his dinner. I took one look at him and knew I'd spend the rest of my life in love with him. Kaya walked over and sat down beside Bridget on the couch. I wish you'd let us meet him before you married him, their father said with a frown. What if I don't approve of him? Does it really matter? Kaya asked. We're married, and that's not changing anytime soon. She folded her arms over her chest, a stance that her whole family recognized as her digging her heels in. Not that any of them would favor her getting a divorce anyway. Their mother sighed dramatically. He was in Texas. You could have at least let us meet him. Kaya shrugged. He wasn't there long, and it was our honeymoon. We didn't see anyone really. A knock at the door interrupted the conversation, and Kaya jumped up and hurried to the door. When she opened it, she smiled, throwing the door wide. Hey, Kelsey. Are you playing welcome wagon today? A petite blonde walked into the cabin, a basket of fruit in her hand. I meant to have this here before your family got here, but I had a rough morning. She waved at the Taylors. It's so nice to meet you. I'm Kelsey Clapper, formerly Kelsey Weston. My family owns the ranch, and I run Kelsey's Cave. I'm sure I'll see you sometime this week. Bridget smiled. I heard that you're a Bigfoot lover. Kelsey nodded. Bigfoot lives right here in our mountains, and I aim to prove it. No matter what it takes. Well, you'd better be careful now that you're pregnant. How far along are you? Bridget kept a straight face when Kaya winked at her. Kaya was tall enough, she was easily visible over the other woman's head. About 6 months. Do I look it? Kelsey turned to the side and pulled her shirt closer. You do. I think you look beautiful. Bridget grinned. Kaya had been right. Kelsey was thrilled to be asked about the baby. She was obviously very proud to be pregnant. After Kelsey had left, Kaya smiled at Bridget. You did great. Thank you. I love that she believes in Bigfoot. Kaya shook her head. It's amazing that she still does after everything her brothers have put her through. They made a plaster cast of a huge foot, and they go up in the hills and make footprints for her to find. They have this spray that they use to make it smell like Bigfoot was around. They're really bratty to her about the whole thing, and she just takes it all in stride. You'd have killed me. No doubt. Kaya agreed. Another knock came to the door, and Kaya hurried off again. There was silence for a minute, and then she led a very tall man with dark hair into the room. Mom, Dad, Bridget, this is Glenn. Glenn, this is my family. Kaya was holding Glenn's arm as if she was afraid he'd run away if she wasn't keeping him there. Bridget smiled. I've heard a lot about you. Glenn frowned. Don't believe any of it. Their dad walked to him, offering his hand to shake. It's so nice to meet you. You too, sir. Glenn looked nervous to be meeting his in-laws, but he handled it well. Bridget immediately wondered if there was something about their relationship that Kaya hadn't mentioned. She'd grill her later. Thanks for having us over for supper tonight. I'm happy all of you were able to make it for the reception. After Kaya and Glenn had left, Bridget stood and stretched. How long do we have before we need to leave for supper? She asked. About an hour. Bridget smiled. I think I'll take my favorite sister's book into the hot tub and catch up on my reading. Back in a while. She loved to read Kaya's romances, but she never felt like there was enough time to do everything she wanted to do. Usually it was her pleasure reading that was thrown out the window. After a long leisurely soak, Bridget showered and dried her hair, dressing carefully in jeans and a button-up shirt. She felt like it was the right thing to wear when staying at a ranch. She usually wore her scrubs everywhere, so she didn't have a whole lot of clothes to choose from. She grabbed her coat and hurried out of her room. When she got to the living room, her parents were waiting on her. Ready? Her mom asked, and Bridget nodded. How she wished she was in this beautiful place alone instead of with her parents. When they arrived at Kaya's house, Bridget immediately fell in love. It was an older ranch house, and it needed some TLC, but it just felt like it had a lot of character. Love the place. Kaya smiled. We'll work on the house once Glenn's business is up and running. She explained that he was starting a horse therapy ranch for autistic children, and Bridget nodded. Glenn really did seem like a good guy, and she was happy for her sister. She'd never want a man that tall for herself though. He was well over a foot taller than she was. Kaya was almost a foot taller, and he was quite a bit taller than her sister. She helped Kaya in the kitchen. So is he coming? Bridget asked. Kevin? Bridget nodded. Yeah. Glenn said he'd be here. There was a loud knock on the door, and a minute later, Glenn came in with a man. This is Kevin. He's the new pastor on the ranch. Bridget felt her heart sink. Pastor? Kaya hiccuped as she tried to keep from laughing, and Bridget elbowed her in the stomach. It's nice to meet you, Pastor. She wanted to kick her sister, but managed to refrain. When she'd been in youth group as a teenager, they'd had to station someone at the exit, because she was considered a flight risk. One little unplanned outing to a convenience store during her youth time, and she never thought she'd live it down. Kaya knew she would never cut it as a pastor's wife. The brat. Kevin stepped forward, taking Bridget's hand in his. It's so nice to meet you. Kaya tells me you live in Texas. Bridget felt a jolt of electricity at his touch. Really? Am I so desperate I'm falling for a pastor? I know I'd make the worst pastor's wife on the entire planet. I do. I'm a nurse there. What kind of nursing do you do? I work for a doctor who does family practice. I started out working in geriatrics, but I just wasn't cut out for that. And you like what you do now? Bridget shrugged. For the most part. I like the regular hours a lot better than I liked being up all night. That wasn't good for me. She'd always needed a very strict sleep schedule to do well, and the constantly changing hours of a nursing home had been very rough on her system. I hope you enjoy your time in Idaho. His eyes met hers, and she was struck by them. They were so brown. And not a mud brown either. No, his reminded her of a giant chocolate kiss. I'm sure I will. She pulled her hand away from his grasp, flushing slightly. She wanted to get to know him better, but, dear God, he was a pastor. Nothing good could come of that. She wanted to wipe her hand off on her thigh, so his touch would not still be there, but how rude would that look? I'd be happy to show you around the ranch. There aren't any events except your sister's this week, so I'm pretty much on my own. I'll hold services in the little chapel in the Old West Town on Sunday. Have you seen the Old West Town yet? Bridget shook her head. I had no idea there were services on the ranch. She went to church regularly, but she tried to sneak out quickly afterward. She tended to offend everyone with her mouth. Not every week, but it's offered. There are some guests who want me to preach this Sunday, so I will. It's just one of the services the ranch offers. Usually, I go to church in town. That sounds really nice. She couldn't quit staring at his eyes. She wanted to drown in them. She wanted to throw herself in his arms and kiss him. He's a pastor, for heaven's sake. You can't fall for him. Do you like to go four-wheeling? He asked. I'd love to take you up into the mountains. We could do some hiking. Or if we get snow like they're predicting, maybe we could go snowmobiling. Would you help me search for Bigfoot? She asked. He nodded. I'd love to help you search for Bigfoot. Anything you want. She sighed. He was so nice. Too nice. He was too good for her. She caused problems, she didn't solve them. It sounds like fun. I wouldn't mind spending some time with you before I head back to Texas. She needed him to know up front that there would be no relationship. There couldn't be. She wasn't good enough for a pastor in any way. I'd like nothing more. Where are you staying? We're in the Barefoot Bungalow. I'll walk over and pick you up in the morning. Say around 9? Bridget nodded slowly. She was going to get in over her head very quickly. God help her, she was falling for a pastor. She was going to kick her sister later, because she deserved it. Chapter 2. Bridget woke early the next morning, grumbling under her breath. She always woke up grumpy. More sleep was all she asked for in life, so why had she agreed to meet a man before noon on her vacation? A pastor of all people. What was Kaya thinking, trying to get her to date a pastor? 30 minutes later, Bridget was dressed and ready for her day. She grabbed a banana from the fruit basket, figuring that would be enough to hold her until she got back to the cabin. Her parents were off doing something, she had no idea what. When she'd finished her breakfast, there was a knock at the door, and she hurried over to open it. As soon as she saw Kevin standing outside the door, she remembered why she was going out with him. The man made her weak in the knees. Hi, she said softly, staring at him. He grinned at her. Are you ready? You're going to need a coat. The weather's just gotten really cold in the last week. Bridget opened the door wider. Let me run and get a coat then. Do you think I need gloves? Absolutely. It's pretty cold right now. She didn't say it, but she was secretly excited to be able to wear winter clothes. She'd bought a new coat, gloves, and a scarf just for this trip. She bundled up and hurried out of her room, ready to take on the Idaho cold. I'm ready. Kevin looked up and saw Bridget all bundled up as if she was about to face the Arctic and almost laughed. I'm sure you'll be plenty warm in that getup. Too warm? Bridget asked with a frown. Nothing was worse than being too warm. If you get too hot, you can take your coat off, or your scarf or gloves. At least we know you'll be warm enough. He opened the front door and held it for her. I thought we could walk through the Old West town, and then we'll go over and borrow the four-wheelers. What's so special about the Old West town? She asked, wishing he'd hold her hand and then mentally scolding herself for wishing it. A pastor holding your hand was like announcing you were married, wasn't it? That's not what she needed at the moment. You'll see. As they walked toward the town, he pointed out the RV park, the direction of the main house and the cafe, pool, and the golf course. The mountains are behind us, but they're hard to miss, so I won't point them out. But you just did. Just did what? You just pointed them out? He sighed and shook his head. I said I wasn't pointing them out. See the difference? No. She shook her head. Did Kaya tell you to make me crazy? When they stepped into the town he'd mentioned, she felt as if she was transported back in time. A general store. Oh, I have a mad desire to shop there. He grinned. Let's. He hurried to open the door for her, and she stepped inside, looking around. The store was heated by a small pot-bellied stove on one side, lending to the authentic feel of the place. Kevin had worked there for someone who was out sick just the week before, so he knew the place well. He wasn't exactly a lover of shopping, but if it made her happy, he'd be happy to accompany her. A woman walked over to them, dressed in clothes that looked like she belonged in an old John Wayne movie. May I help you? Hi, Heidi. Kevin grinned at the shopkeeper. I like the outfit. I haven't seen you wear period costume before today. I haven't before today. I was thinking it would be fun and add to the atmosphere of the place. I won't wear it in summer, because it would be too hot, but it's perfect for chilly fall and winter days. So it is. Have you met Bridget yet? She's Kaya's younger sister. Bridget held her hand out for Heidi's. Kaya and I are actually twins. She's just taller. A whole foot taller. Heidi grinned. I can see it in the face, but your coloring is so different. And she's a tad bit taller. Anyway, it's nice to meet you. I love your store. The store seemed to be stocked with every necessity for a camping vacation. There was food, clothing, and even blankets and firewood. I'm kind of proud of it. If you're looking for a souvenir from your vacation, feel free to buy a postcard, instead of stealing our pastor. Heidi winked at Bridget, who blushed. I'll consider that. She wandered through the store, stopping and looking at every little thing. Oh look! Bigfoot magnets. My little sister thought those were necessary, and I argued with her, but when she digs her heels in, she's a force to be reckoned with. A tall man who must have come in right behind them, held his hand out to her. I'm Wade Weston. I'm the manager around here. So nice to meet you. Bridget had an insane urge to curtsy, but she managed to restrain herself. Love the store, and our cabin is fabulous. I'm Kaya's little sister. Wade nodded. Kaya's nice. She and Glenn seem very happy. I'm here for the reception. I hope you enjoy your time at River's End. Wade walked over to talk to Heidi. I love the costume. We may need to make the others wear them. If you do, don't blame it on me. Please. Bridget shook her head with a grin. She understood what Heidi was worried about exactly. At her old nursing home, one of the nurses had showed up at work in one of the old-fashioned white nursing uniforms like they'd worn in the 70s and 80s. The director of nursing had liked it and suggested everyone wear them, and the rest of the nurses had gotten annoyed. No one wanted to mess with that nonsense when scrubs were available. Bridget picked up a couple of small magnets to purchase. She loved having a refrigerator that looked like she'd been all over the world, when really, she'd rarely been out of Texas. She paid for her items, and she and Kevin left the store. For a friend back home? He asked, nodding at her bag. One for me, and one for my friend, Jenny. I don't think she's ever been to Idaho. Jenny's family was more likely to go to Europe on a vacation than a western state. Next door to the mercantile was an apothecary shop, and Bridget stopped short. An old-fashioned apothecary? My nurse's heart is beating faster just looking at it. Are we allowed to go in? Kevin laughed and opened the door. This is the first aid station on the ranch. There's a full-time nurse who works here. An older woman with gray hair and dark blue eyes descended the stairs, stopping at the bottom. Are you just looking, or does someone need me? We're just looking, Kevin called back. Actually, I'd like to pick your brain for a minute if you don't mind, Bridget said, a smile on her face. I've heard you're retiring, and I'm an RN. This place is amazing, and my sister just married Glenn. So you're thinking about applying for my job, and want to know what's entailed? The nurse came to the bottom of the staircase and waved a hand toward a very modern-looking first aid area. Have a seat, and we'll talk. Bridget hurried over to sit in the visitor's chair, and sensed that Kevin walked up behind her. After Emily was seated, Bridget asked, "Tell me what your job entails." You name it, it's there. I treat people for altitude sickness more than anything. Lots of people for dehydration, because they don't pack enough water and go walking the mountains. Minor injuries. I decide if someone needs to be sent off to the nearest hospital, or if I can treat them here. I've dealt with panic attacks. At the moment, my most frequent patient is Kelsey. She's convinced her baby is going to be an alien Bigfoot crossbreed and has lots of questions. Bridget grinned. I can picture her thinking that. Girl's a mess, but I love her. I've been here since before she was born. Emily put her hand to her back. I lived in town until my husband died, and then we renovated the upstairs of this place into a small apartment for me. It works, but it's nothing fancy. Bridget bit her lip. She loved the idea of working at this beautiful ranch, and the opportunity to live above an old-time apothecary shop would make her so happy. How many hours do you work? Emily shrugged. It really varies. We're open year-round, so there's always something going on. I'm more on call than anything else. I sometimes teach first aid classes to new employees. Everyone here has to be CPR certified, and I'm licensed to teach it. I vary from 25 to 40 hours per week, I think. I haven't tracked it in years. I'm just here when I'm needed. And who would I talk to about applying for your position? How soon are you thinking of retiring? I'm ready to retire. I'd retire tomorrow if there was someone to take my place. Bridget bit her lip. I can't give my notice until I get back to Texas, and that's if I decide to apply. I'll think on it. After they'd left the building, Kevin looked down at her with new interest. If she was thinking of staying, maybe they could have a real relationship. He'd love that. As soon as they stepped outside, Bridget caught the scent of fresh-baked bread. Oh, something smells yummy. Kevin just laughed and shook his head. She certainly had no problem being herself in front of a man she barely knew. He followed as she spotted the bakery and hurried to it, opening the door and leaving him standing in the street. Inside, Bridget wandered to the display case, her nose twitching with happiness. I want one of everything. The girl behind the counter smiled. I can box that up for you, but are you sure you can eat that much? Kevin walked up behind her, shaking his head. Maybe you could choose 2 things, and we'll have them for dessert later. But what will you eat? Bridget winked at him as she contemplated for a moment, before nodding. I guess that's enough. Could I pick 2 different things, and we split them, though? He grinned. Sure. Any 2 things would thrill me. Bridget looked through everything in the case 3 times. Choosing is hard. I'll be here every day until I go home. I promise you. I'm Miranda. I have a feeling we're going to be friends if you're here every day. The girl behind the counter grinned. How long are you here for? Just a week. I'm getting the impression it won't be long enough. My sister married Glenn, though, so I'll be back. I like Kaya. Miranda smiled. We'll happily feed you every day. We're not open Sundays, though. I'll just buy double on Saturday then. Thank you for helping me plan my week. Finally, Bridget pointed. I want a cream cheese brownie and that cupcake with the purple icing. That looks amazing. That's a white cupcake with huckleberry buttercream frosting. Oh, yeah. I could eat my weight in that. Bridget happily waited while Miranda put them in a bag. Thank you so much. Kevin stepped forward to pay, and Bridget frowned. He hadn't gotten a choice, so he shouldn't have to pay. I can pay for it. We're sharing, so I get to pay. He handed Miranda some cash and waited for his change. Thanks, Miranda. You're welcome. I'll see you again. Bridget. Bridget turned and smiled. By the end of the week, we'll be lifelong friends, so knowing each other's names is probably important. Miranda laughed and waved. See you tomorrow. Just before she reached the door, Bridget spun around again. Miranda, I need to know something. It's very important. Miranda frowned. Okay, what is it? Cinderella or Belle? Bridget could feel Kevin's stare. He must think she'd lost her mind. No matter. She wasn't sure she could be lifelong friends with someone who chose Belle over Cinderella, so it was vitally important. Cinderella. Who else could it be? I mean, it's the classic fairy tale. Yup, we're going to be great friends. Bridget stepped outside looking around her. Where's the saloon? What's an old west town without a saloon? It's down across the street from the Mercantile. You were so busy being excited about the apothecary that you missed it. Bridget frowned. Well, what's inside? She'd already figured out that the shops weren't always what they seemed on the outside. It's really an old-fashioned looking saloon-type place, but they have a soda shop. Fancy coffee, sodas, and ice cream. Want to try it? She bit her lip for a moment before nodding. Would you mind? I don't really need to eat there, but I want to see it. Then let's go. Kevin loved to watch her excitement at the place. He'd been just as in love with it when he'd first come to the ranch. History had always appealed to him, and he couldn't help but be sucked into the magic of the town there. He pointed out a huge tree, off behind the row of houses behind her. That tree was the tree the original Westons decorated at Christmas time when they moved here. And that house belonged to Frankie Weston, the matriarch of the Weston family. Wait, the matriarch was named Frankie? Yup. Her real name was Francine, but she pretended to be a boy until she sent for a mail-order groom. She was a bit ahead of her time. Sounds like it. Do you know when that was? Kevin shrugged. I've heard a couple of different things. Some say it was in the 1880s, some say the 1890s. I'm not sure what the real story is, but I'm doing some research on my time off to put it together. I'm going to gather as much as I can, and have Kaya write out a history of the ranch for me. She can do it. My sister is the best writer around. I'm surprised she'd agree to write something nonfiction though. She hates nonfiction. She did ask if she could fictionalize it and write it as a romance. I probably should have told her no, but I was so excited that she was going to do it, I said yes. So my sister is going to write a romance novel about the history of this ranch. That sounds like Kaya. What's she going to call it? He frowned, racking his brain. I think she said Mail Order Miracle? Something like that. I'm not sure. I'm sure she'll tell me when it's out. Do you read her work? Bridget nodded. Not always, but I try to when I have time to spare. Am I going to blush if I try to read it? Probably not. She doesn't get too terribly naughty with her books. Next to the saloon was a sign propped up against the side of the building. She tilted her head so she could read it. Sadie's Soda Saloon. She watched as he opened the saloon door. As soon as she was inside, she grinned. There was a long wooden bar to the left with bar stools and a flight of stairs to the right. I love this place. Me too, he said with a grin. I like to hang out here and write my sermons sometimes. She frowned at the thought of him being a pastor. Did you always want to be a pastor? He shook his head. Nope. My upbringing wasn't super religious, but when I finished college, I realized what I wanted more than anything was to help people. I had become involved in a local mission during college, and I decided to go to seminary. I'm actually more versed in counseling than I am in preaching, but I can do either. The ranch hired me on to perform weddings, but I preach once every 3 or 4 weeks. I see. But you don't really have a congregation, right? Not really. I actually do a lot to help with different things around the ranch. If someone calls in sick or a department is shorthanded for a bit, I'll come in and work. I love the diversity of not having to do the same thing every day. I have to show you my little church. Bridget noticed there were a few people there, sipping coffee. I'm not thirsty or anything, but this place is cool. Go ahead and look around. Sadie won't mind. Sadie? He gestured to the woman behind the bar. Am I allowed to go upstairs? Sadie shook her head. No, it's just storage up there. Stay down here. Bridget spun in a slow circle, looking at everything around her. I want to live here when I grow up. Kevin laughed. I'm happy to help you make that happen. They stopped at the church next, and it was just what Bridget thought an old-time church should be. It had stained glass windows, hard wooden pews, and a pulpit at the front. She sank into one of the pews. Preach it. He was startled for a moment, but how could he resist? He walked to the front and talked softly about the love of God. After 5 minutes, he was done, and he came out and sat beside her. Are you a Christian, Bridget? She nodded. I am. Not a very good one, I'm afraid, but I am. Why aren't you a good one? He asked, frowning. Good Christians don't offend people. I have a hard time opening my mouth without being offensive. I haven't noticed that. And a lot of good Christians offend people. She shrugged, not wanting to get more into it. I love your town, and this little church. This really must be an amazing place to work. Especially for a history buff. He frowned, not wanting to change the subject, but he nodded. I wouldn't trade my life here for anything. She thought for a moment he might kiss her, but he just looked into her eyes. His hair was dark and his eyes were a deep brown, and Bridget just wanted to melt into them. He was so incredibly sexy, it was wasted on a pastor in Bridget's opinion. Let's walk, he said. Are you hungry? I thought I'd get us boxed lunches to eat on the trail, but it's already past 1. We took a long time in the town. Yeah, I'm very hungry. Isn't there supposed to be a cafe here or something? She put her hand over her eyes and looked around. There had been a diner in the town, but he said it wasn't open at the moment. Yes, Kelsey's Cave. It was named after the grandmother of the Kelsey who currently runs it. The grandmother opened it and taught Kelsey everything she knows. He walked beside her, stealing glances out of the corner of his eye. Why was he so attracted to this crazy little woman? He was certain he'd seen her stab her sister with a tiny fork the previous evening, but both sisters had just left, so could that have been what happened? I met Kelsey last night. She's really fun. She is. Is she the reason you want to hunt for Bigfoot? She inspired it, but I love the idea. I mean, who wouldn't want to hunt for Bigfoot? Kevin shrugged at that, stopping in front of a building with a huge sign reading, Kelsey's Cave. What's good here? She asked as they went in and found a booth off to one side. Kelsey herself came to the table immediately. Everything's good. Bob is the best cook in all of Idaho. Maybe in all of the world, but don't tell him I said that or he might get a big head, and what would we do with a big-headed cook? Bridget grinned. Lop off his ears and serve them as an appetizer? I like the way you think. Just enough gruesome details to make me smile. Do you like horror films? Bridget nodded emphatically. I love them. You? Oh, yeah. You two should come over for a movie night. How's tomorrow night? Bridget shrugged. I think the only day I'm booked is Saturday. Today's what? Tuesday? I always lose track of my days on vacation. Yeah, it's Tuesday. Well? Sure. I'm game. Kelsey looked at Kevin, who squirmed a bit. I've never really been into horror films. Kelsey rolled her eyes. Then you and Shane can sit around talking about guy stuff while we girls watch them. Don't be a pain, Pastor Kevin. Kevin shrugged. I can hang out with Shane, I guess. Good. I'll make my famous enchiladas. Do you like hot or burn your tongue off and never recover scorching? Bridget shrugged. I would probably prefer hot, but Kaya would be all about burning her tongue off. Yeah, we like the same brand of Cajun seasoning. We discovered that when she first got here. Of course you do. Bridget shook her head. She said you two got along very well. I should have guessed. Does this mean that you won't eat our Cajun seasoning topped everything with us? Kelsey asked, her eyes wide. Nope. Maybe I should meet your twin, since you love mine so much. Kelsey smiled. I'm sure you will. It's a big ranch, but the whole family will be at Glenn and Kaya's reception. I'll make sure I introduce you. Kaya said you guys are identical. Kelsey shrugged. We were at one point. Her hair is shorter and darker. And she's much thinner. No protrusions. Kelsey patted her pleasantly rounded belly. The clothes she was wearing showed her belly off more than the clothes from the previous day. Bridget laughed. So tell me what to order. Special today is a taco burger, served with a small mountain of fried cheese curds. Bridget handed the menu back to Kelsey without blinking. You sold me. Kevin looked back and forth between the two women. He was pleased Bridget got along with everyone so quickly. I'll take the special as well. No need to hurt Bob's feelings. Kelsey rolled her eyes. Like Bob has feelings. She raised her voice as she said it. From the kitchen, Bridget heard a gruff voice say, one of us has to be able to keep a stiff upper lip while the other one cries and blames it on pregnancy hormones. Bridget giggled softly. The place was pretty full, but no one blinked an eye. They must all be regulars. I'll go put this in. Back in a few. Kelsey hurried off, and Bridget turned her attention to Kevin. It was the first time he'd sat across from her, and she was suddenly at a loss for words. Why does he have to be a pastor? Why? 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 Are you and Kaya close? Kevin asked, nodding at Kelsey, to thank her for putting the water in front of him. He had to say something to break the silence. Bridget suddenly seemed incapable of speech. Bridget shrugged. I don't think we're as close as most twins. I mean, we love each other. I can't think of anyone I love more than my sister, but we don't always get along great. We don't exactly share a brain or anything. Why don't you get along? Bridget shrugged. She gets on my nerves. I get on her nerves. We have no siblings other than each other, and I think sometimes we just are around each other too much and annoy each other. She sighed. And we disagree on the most fundamental of all things, who the best Disney princess is. I say it's good old Cindy, but she says Belle. How could a bookworm be the best Disney princess, I ask you? Cindy? Cinderella, of course. Please tell me you received a proper education and you've seen all the Disney movies. Well, I've seen more Disney movies than I have horror films. That should count for something, shouldn't it? She frowned at him. We'll get you educated before I leave. I'm sure there's a library of movies to borrow from here. I read about it on the website. She sighed. You'll choose before I go, won't you? He laughed. If I absolutely need to, I will. What about you? Any siblings? He shook his head. Nope. Don't even know my parents. I was raised on a boys' ranch in Nowhere, Texas. It was a nice place, but it was for kids who the system had failed or who were in so much trouble their parents didn't know what to do with them. My parents dumped me there as a baby, and they took me in. I'm sorry. Her hand covered his on the middle of the table, and she immediately wanted to remove it when she realized who she was with. Had they just declared their engagement? Nothing to be sorry about. It was a great place to grow up. I was loved, and I doubt I would have been with my parents. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given me up. I guess not. It was odd, thinking of him as a young boy alone tugged on her heartstrings more than she would have expected. And when he turned his hand over and gripped hers, her stomach flipped and flopped. She was in trouble. Bad trouble. Why did he have to be a pastor? Chapter 3. When Kelsey came back to the table a few minutes later, Bridget asked her the question she asked any woman she was contemplating having for a friend. The most important question she knew. Cinderella or Belle? Kelsey grinned as she placed their water on the table. That's easy. Belle, of course. Who would like someone else? Bridget made a face. I do. I think Cinderella is the perfect Disney heroine for any era. She's the one whose story is retold again and again. Any writer who knows how to use a keyboard rewrites Cindy's story. Not that many rewrite Belle's. Kelsey frowned, her hands on her hips. Don't make me throw you out of my place, Bridget. You know as well as I do that Cinderella is just a Belle wannabe. Don't try and make me mad. I'm pregnant and hormonal. Kevin looked back and forth between Kelsey and Bridget. Bridget's face was turning a little red, but she sat back and crossed her arms across her chest. Fine. Be on the wrong side. Kelsey sighed. How does Kaya feel? Bridget wrinkled her nose. She's on the wrong side too. Might is right. With that, Kelsey turned on her heel and walked back to the counter where she was refilling the salt shakers from all the tables. She kept looking up at Bridget and mumbling something under her breath, but she said nothing else Bridget and Kevin could actually hear. Kevin looked at Bridget as if she'd lost her mind, because he wasn't sure that she hadn't. Why are you picking fights with people about who the best Disney princess is? Bridget shrugged. It's just my thing. I have a favorite princess, and I think everyone else should love the same one. That's a bit crazy, you know. I never claimed to be sane. She dug a tiny fork out of the pocket of her jeans. Would a sane woman carry a shrimp fork everywhere for the express purpose of stabbing her sister? I thought I saw you with a shrimp fork. Why do you have that? I told you. I carry it so I can stab Kaya with it. It keeps us from arguing so much. He frowned for a moment, not wanting to ask, but how does that keep you from arguing with her? If she starts to get on my nerves, I stab her. If I get on her nerves, she stabs me. There's a whole lot of stabbing going on, but no one is really getting hurt, and we're not wanting to kill each other because of disagreements either. See? It makes sense. So basically, you take out your aggression on your sister by stabbing her? Bridget nodded emphatically. We were on a cruise together recently, and we were annoying our friend, Jenny. We discovered the shrimp fork trick by accident, but it was fabulous. Of course, we ate all our meals with our tiny shrimp forks and annoyed the waiters, but we tipped extra to make up for it. Kevin stared at her. He was very attracted, but he worried she may need a mental health professional. How exactly does Kaya feel about this? We got each other boxes of shrimp forks. We seriously got each other the same gifts. She frowned down at hers. Of course, I got hers with Cinderella on the end, and she got mine with Beau, which is really a dirty rotten trick. Have you sought out professional help? Bridget laughed, the sound filling up the diner. I thought about it, but I'm as sane as the next person. I just found a way to take out my aggression on my sister without it eating away at me. I guess. He shook his head. I've never heard of anyone doing anything like that before. I shipped Nerf guns ahead. If she makes me really mad, I'll give her a gun and 300 ammunition, and I'll take the same. We'll warn everyone there's a war going on and just make it happen. He shook his head. How did a sane person respond? He did remember summers when tensions ran high on the boys' ranch when they would each be given a squirt gun with a jug of water filled with food coloring. Each boy would get a new white shirt, and they'd run around shooting each other and creating shirts with one-of-a-kind designs. It was a way to get out their aggressions without hurting anyone. Why couldn't adults do it too? Think of the lives that could be saved if the rulers of opposing countries were given shrimp forks instead of armies. Maybe she was onto something. Do you want to go up in the mountains on four-wheelers after lunch? What time is it? She asked. He pulled out his phone and checked. Just after 2. Kelsey put their plates in front of them. No need to hurry, but we're going to be closing up shop around you. Bridget frowned. I had no idea you were closing. Do you want us to take them to go? Of course not. Kelsey shook her head. You two eat. It'll be a while before we're done with everything anyway. Bridget grabbed one of the cheese curds and popped it into her mouth, immediately fanning it with her hand. Hot. She took a huge gulp of her water. But good. He frowned at the cheese curd. I've honestly never had these. What exactly is a cheese curd anyway? Mom is from Wisconsin, so I grew up eating them. She says they're what's left in the vat after the cheese is made. Doesn't sound terribly appetizing when you phrase it that way, but it's so good. She popped another into her mouth and immediately fanned it with her hand again. You distracted me and made me forget how hot they were. He picked one up, turned it over in his hand, and then dipped it in ranch. I bet it would cool off if you dipped it. He put the whole thing into his mouth as she had, chewing slowly. These are really good. She nodded. Better without adulteration. Why would you put ranch on something that's already delicious? Because it's here, and I like to dip. Well, break the habit, man. Try the real thing. I promise it's delicious. He shook his head at her bossiness, but picked up another cheese curd and bit into it without the ranch. It burned his tongue a bit, but she was right. It is better. Told you. She picked up her taco burger and bit into it, a small piece of taco meat sliding out. That's pretty good too. He eyed his burger. He usually just got a sandwich, but he'd wanted to be adventurous after hearing her order. You sure? It won't poison me? If you didn't want to try it, why did you order it? He shrugged, feeling a bit stupid. Seemed like a good idea at the time. You ordered it, now you have to eat it. She gave him a look, making it clear he wasn't going to get out of trying at least one bite. He picked up the burger and bit into it warily. Hey, this isn't too bad. She rolled her eyes. I don't understand, but I'm not going to say anything else. He took a sip of his water. You never answered my question earlier. Are you still up for a trip into the mountains? Do we have time? It's already after 2. He sighed. Probably not. Sun sets around 4:30. Then we'll do it another time. Tomorrow? She grinned. Sure. Why not? We should find a place to watch movies too. I think someone needs a little Cindy and Belle in his life. You're going to make me watch kids' movies? They're not kids' movies. They're Disney princess movies. That's like saying that Star Trek is a sci-fi show, when it changed a whole generation of television viewers. He didn't want her to get started on Star Trek. He was a huge fan, but she didn't need to know that. Not yet anyway. Her obsession with Disney princesses was kind of scary. He was waiting for her to spout that nonsense about Princess Leia from Star Wars being a Disney princess now, and he would go toe-to-toe with her on that one. He didn't much care about which princess was best out of Cinderella or Belle, though. I guess we can do that. There's a library in the main house for guests with a whole selection of movies. I think most are family-friendly. When will we do that then? He shrugged. When do you want to do it? We could also watch a movie on the television in your guest cabin, but the only one that has the streaming functionality is the one in the living room, and I'm not sure how I feel about dating with your parents watching. He'd spent a week in the cabin when he'd first gotten to the ranch, so it was very familiar to him. Bridget cocked her head to one side, studying Kevin. Are we dating then? I don't know what else to call it. A stupendously tame wild vacation fling? Why stupendously tame? Because just wild would imply all kinds of sexual shenanigans, and as a pastor, I don't do that before marriage. So it'll have to be stupendously tame instead of wild. She sighed. I guess we can do the stupendously tame thing then. I might demand a kiss or two. Kisses will be expected. Kevin winked at her as he ate another bite of his burger. Once they were finished, he quickly paid and they left the restaurant, walking in the direction of her cabin. Do you want to watch something in the main house? She shrugged. Sounds good. We could do Disney tonight and horror flicks tomorrow night. Both ends of the spectrum. You're on. He frowned, thinking about the best way to do it. Do you need to check in with your parents? She sighed. I should. I've been on my own for 5 years, but I still need to check in with Mom and Dad before I go on a date on my vacation. It just made sense for me to share a place with them and not pay for my own. I'll come back around 7 then. I'll bring a pizza and some popcorn. We'll watch movies, and you can tell me why you're so sure that Cindy is better than Belle. She put her hand on the doorknob, but he stopped her, leaning down to gently kiss her cheek. I'll be back in a few hours. Kevin turned and walked away, and she stared after him. His bottom looked good in his tight jeans. Was it okay for a girl to notice a pastor's butt? She didn't know, and at the moment she just didn't care. If it was wrong, then she didn't care about doing the right thing. How could she with a butt like that? She went in and sat down on the couch, where her parents were talking. What did you guys do today? They'd been gone before she woke up, and she realized she had no idea at all where they'd been. Her dad smiled. "We rented a boat and went out on the lake. Caught some trout, but I threw them back. Your mother said she wasn't spending her whole evening cleaning and cooking fish when there was a perfectly good restaurant here on the ranch." Bridget wasn't surprised. Her mother had never been overly fond of cooking. "Sounds good to me. So you guys are going to the restaurant?" Her mother frowned. "I thought we'd all go together. Kevin and I are going to watch Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast. He needs to choose. You're not dragging him into that silly argument you used to have with your sister, are you? Nobody cares who the better princess is." "I do. Kaya does. Jenny does. Kelsey does. Miranda does." Her mother frowned at her. Who on earth is Miranda? She'd met Jenny and Kelsey, but Miranda was a new name. "She runs the bakery in the old west town. Her baked goods look wonderful. I'm going to get 2 desserts from there every day." Bridget frowned, realizing Kevin had absconded with their desserts. He'd better remember to bring them to the movie. "You and your sweet tooth. All right. You have fun watching your movie. I'm going to get my nap." Bridget stood and yawned widely. Her one complaint about being a nurse was there were no nap times. She'd seriously considered moving somewhere they had mandatory naps in the middle of the day. Naps weren't just for babies. They were for everyone, and should be embraced by the general populace. "Sleep well," her father said. As Bridget walked away, she could hear her parents whispering, but she didn't care. They could talk about her all day. She was going to have a wonderful evening with a good man. What else mattered? She quickly changed into her pajamas and crawled between the sheets, yawning widely. She was excited about seeing Kevin again, but even more excited about napping first. She would never understand children. Didn't they understand that naps were a gift from God? The last thing on her mind as she drifted off was the confusion on Kevin's face when she'd brought up the princesses to first Miranda and then Kelsey. Eventually, he'd understand the way her mind worked, and when he did, he'd either propose on the spot or run screaming into the night. There could be no in between. She smiled. Yes-siree, Kevin was in for the ride of his life. Asterisk. Kevin let himself into his small apartment in Reston, locking the door behind him. He wasn't sure why he was locking doors, except that he'd gotten into the habit when he'd gone to seminary. His school hadn't been in the safest area of town. He sank into a chair and stared bemusedly at the wall. Bridget was something else. He wasn't sure if he should get far, far away, or just embrace her silliness. Either way, he was very intrigued, and all he could think about was getting to know her better. He'd never met anyone quite like her, and he was certain he wouldn't again. The woman was nothing if not original. He would continue to pursue a relationship with her, because he couldn't seem to help himself. Not since he was in high school and had hormones coming out his nose and ears had he felt so much for one small woman. Surely if he felt that much, they were meant to be together. If not, how could God have put her in his path? He sighed contentedly. He'd found the woman God meant for him to marry. Now he just had to convince her she was that woman. It couldn't be too hard, could it? She seemed like the perfect bride for a too serious pastor. Chapter 4. Bridget was waiting when Kevin arrived. Her parents were already gone, having decided to go to the restaurant and eat and do some dancing. When she'd been a teenager, her parents had always embarrassed her with their constant dancing. In the living room, at wedding receptions, anywhere there was a dance floor, they were dancing together, and it wasn't just slow dances. Oh, they did their share of dancing cheek to cheek, but more often than not, Dad was spinning Mom around like she was a top. It was crazy. Cute, but crazy. They were in their 40s. What if one of them broke a hip? She locked the cabin and followed him out to his car, a rusty old pile of bolts. She didn't care. She'd never judged a man by his car. He drove them the short distance across the ranch to the main house in silence. When they'd arrived, she looked at him in surprise. She'd thought this was the main house, but it was close enough. She'd figured she was wrong. Why had they driven? Why didn't we walk? He shrugged. It's a lot colder at night, and I didn't want you to get too chilly. You're not used to the cold night air yet. And you are? You said you were raised in Texas. Surely he was no more used to the cold of Idaho than she was. Their Texas blood was too thin for the extreme colds of the north. I was, but I went to seminary in Wyoming. I've been in the north for long enough to be used to the weather here. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a pizza bag, the kind a pizza delivery person carries. Where'd you get that? On eBay, of course. There's nowhere else that you could buy one. We had lots of pizza nights at seminary, and someone always had to go and pick up the pizzas, because it saved us a couple of bucks, and we were all perpetually broke. I got sick of cold pizzas, and I found this for $5 on eBay. That was all she wrote. Bridget shook her head, laughing. I shouldn't be surprised, but somehow, I am. You were never a broke college student? I definitely was, but I never thought of buying a pizza bag off eBay. I went to school in a big city, though, and we usually walked to the nearest pizza place. Or had pizza on campus. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the front door of the house. I hope no one's using the library, because I can't get my Disney princess on if I have to watch Die Hard or something manly like that. Die Hard? Really? He shrugged. That's what my friends liked. I never really was a fan, but I've got it memorized anyway. You need some Disney princesses, then. Very badly. He pushed open the door of the library, and she found a light switch. The room was dark. Are you sure we're allowed to just come in here? He nodded. I talked to Wade about it when I first got here, and he said this was for anyone to use. He could have taken her back to his place, but he didn't think it was right for a pastor to have a woman in his house if no one else was there. He tried to live by a strict moral code, so no one could come to any erroneous conclusions. Besides, he still felt awfully hormonal around her, and he didn't want anything to inadvertently happen. He put the pizza down, along with the bag in his other hand filled with plates, napkins, forks, and the baked goods she'd bought earlier, while she went to work looking through all the titles in the library. The walls were filled with shelves. The shelves seemed to be equally divided between movies and books. It took her just a moment to locate both movies, because they were alphabetical. She popped the first in, and sat down, picking up the remote. I'm saving the best for last, so we'll start with Beauty and the Beast. It's a good movie, but it's not Cinderella. He sat down beside her, taking the pizza box out of the carrier and serving them each a piece. You didn't say what you like on pizza, so I went with a basic cheeseburger pizza. I would think anyone would love that. He pulled a couple of bottles of water from the bag and handed her one, twisting the top off his and taking a swig. The opening credits came on the screen, and Bridget's whole face lit up. It was as if she was seeing the movie for the first time. He wanted to laugh at her, but how could he? She was adorable in her love for Disney. By the time Beauty and the Beast was done, she was nestled up close to him, and his arm was around her shoulders. He liked it. Maybe too much, but he sure wasn't going to complain. As the closing credits played on the television, she swiped at the tears in her eyes. See? It's a good movie, but there's something so perfect about Cinderella. Belle makes me a little bit crazy. She's kind of a know-it-all. He hadn't gotten that from the movie, but that was fine with him. If she wanted to think of Belle as a know-it-all, more power to her. I liked it. I think I've seen it before, because some of the songs were familiar, but I'm really not sure. Bridget shook her head at him. Your education is so lacking. My heart aches for you. She jumped up, swapping out the DVDs. Now, for the best movie of the evening. She sat down and snuggled close to him again. His arm came around her shoulders, and she settled her head against him. Never had a man made her feel so protected as Kevin did. She sighed. It could never last. He was a pastor who lived in Idaho, and she was a nurse from Texas. How could anyone think it might last? Kevin stroked his hand up and down her arm. Her delicate bone structure brought out his protectiveness. She was special, and he was going to keep her. How could he not? You'll see right away that Cinderella is better. She communes with the animals and not just the household items. He forced his attention back to the television with real effort. He wanted to stare at her, not Cinderella. As she had with the first movie, she sang along with all the songs, loudly and off-key. She seemed to genuinely enjoy singing, and he didn't mind. He was mostly tone-deaf anyway. Her voice wasn't bad, but she couldn't seem to hit a note for anything. In between songs, they shared the 2 desserts she'd chosen at the bakery, each of them using one of her tiny shrimp forks. When the movie was over, she shut the television off with the remote in her hand, turning to him and tucking her legs under her on the couch. I'm glad you didn't complain about my singing. I know I'm not good, but I make up for my lack of skills with sheer volume. You do. He grinned at her, his hand stroking her cheek. Well? Have you made up your mind yet? He frowned. Do I have to decide tonight? Both women have a lot going for them. Cindy was great with the animals, just like you said, but did you see Beau stick up for the beast? The whole town was ready to kill him, and she not only didn't buckle under peer pressure, but she did everything she could to save him. He shook his head. I'm just not sure I can make that kind of decision on such short notice. Bridget rolled her eyes. You know Cindy is better. I know no such thing. I'm going to have to think on it. Analyze both storylines, and think about the songs that were sung by each of them. Belle's songs were a bit better. Not that he'd heard them over her caterwauling, but it was better to hold out and make her wait for his answer. He was sure she'd continue to see him until she got it. She glared at him for a moment. You're really going to make me wait to hear which your favorite is? Are you kidding me? He shook his head. I'm sure I'll have made a decision before it's time for you to go home to Texas. She frowned, her eyes meeting his. I already hate the idea of going home. This place, it grows on you. I want to stay here forever. Apply for the nursing job. I sure wouldn't complain. She sighed. I have to think about it. I've never lived outside of Texas. I'd be leaving my home and everything I know. My parents. My best friend. You would. But your sister is here. The ranch is here, and you can't deny how wonderful this ranch is. And, not to elevate myself in your eyes, but I'm here. I want you to stay, Bridget. She frowned. I'll think about it while you think about which princess you like better. You know it really does matter to me which one you choose. What if we're not compatible? I don't think Disney movies are the most important things in compatibility. Oh, you don't? What is the most important thing? He shrugged. I don't know. Feelings about faith and God. Kissing. She let out a short bark of laughter. Kissing, huh? He nodded emphatically. How will we know if we're meant to be together if we don't have chemistry? No, I think kissing will tell us a whole lot about whether or not we are compatible. Oh, yeah? He nodded. So, how about it? Want to see if we're compatible? She tilted her head to one side with her lips pursed. I don't know. When you kiss a pastor, are you then required to marry him so you won't sully his name and make him look like he's easy? He laughed. Nope. But if you touch any bare skin, that should be under clothes it does. So you can't even touch my bare back, because that belongs under my clothes, you see. He was amazed at how easily he could banter with this woman. Always he'd been tongue-tied around girls, and way too serious. Suddenly he felt like that was gone, and he could have fun. I'll be sure to keep my hands on the outside of your shirt then. And no touching below the waist even on top of my clothes. I think we'd both be struck by lightning for that one. And then we'd have to get married, because that's how pastors' wives get pregnant, you see. Bridget nodded as if he was imparting great wisdom to her. I'm so glad you taught me this. I was sure pastors' wives got pregnant the same way regular women did. Now I'll know what I should and shouldn't do if I want to have a baby. Does that mean you're marrying me? She laughed softly. You can't trick me like that. Just get over here and kiss me, Bridget the midget. Hey. You can't call me that. Your sister does. He didn't wait any longer, and instead he leaned forward and gently brushed his lips across hers. The tingling that accompanied the kiss gave him a bit of a shock. He wanted more. So much more. He really did want this sweetly insane woman for his bride. Bridget blinked up at him a couple of times, her world having changed in the 30 seconds that their lips had touched. She wanted nothing more than to really touch him inside his clothes. She wanted so much. Wow. He's a pastor. Why don't I care? He cleared his throat, unable to pull his gaze from hers. I think I should get you back to your parents. I have a lot to think about. She nodded. I think we both do. He hoped she meant that she was thinking about taking the nursing job at the ranch, because he wanted to spend his life with her. He knew you weren't supposed to be able to tell that when you'd only known someone for a little over 24 hours. Wow, had he really just met her yesterday? But he did. She was his. Forever wouldn't be long enough. Together, they cleaned up the mess they'd made and put the movies back in their proper alphabetized spots. Bridget shrugged into her coat, avoiding eye contact with him. Her life was different now, but she couldn't just tell him that, could she? She would have with any other man, but no other man would have believed her. That's where Kevin was different. He opened the door and shut the light off, walking toward his car with her at his side. Where she should always be. They drove back to the barefoot bungalow in silence, and when he walked her to the door, he briefly touched his lips to her cheek. He couldn't kiss her lips again tonight. It would be too much. Bridget leaned back against the door, feeling like she was in a daze. She needed chocolate. And ice cream. Chocolate ice cream. How else would she be able to think? Walking to the kitchen, she opened the freezer and found a gallon of her favorite chocolate marshmallow. She didn't bother with a bowl, but ate it right out of the container. She was in love. And he was a pastor she'd only known for a day. Had she lost her ever-loving mind? Asterisk. Bridget was ready at 10 the next morning. Her parents were already gone for the day, her mother choosing to spend it with Kaya, while Dad was spending the day with Glenn in the stable there on the ranch. When the knock came, she hurried to open the door, but she couldn't meet his eyes. She could barely speak to him. I thought we'd start with the four-wheelers this time. We'll grab them and drive over to the cafe so that Kelsey can fix us up with lunches. How does that sound? Bridget frowned. Did you forget about seeing my lifelong friend Miranda for dessert? Kevin groaned, running his hand over the back of his neck. I guess I was kind of wishing you'd forget. Are you trying to deprive me of delicious sweet treats from the bakery? You fiend. No, of course not. We just don't have a ton of time today. Life is short. Dessert comes first. I'm so sorry, Bridget. I will never try to get between you and your bakery addiction again. See that you don't. They walked side by side toward the old west town. Where do we get the four-wheelers from? The stable, which is right beside the cafe. We're going out of our way for the bakery, but at least we can go straight to the stable from there. Does Miranda bake the same things every day? Or does she sometimes get creative? Kevin shrugged. You know, I don't think I'd ever been in the bakery until yesterday. I just never made it there. Bridget stopped walking. I feel like I don't even know you. How could you not go into a bakery? What a strange man you are. He laughed, taking her hand in his. I promise that's the only thing that's odd about me. I mean, I like sweets, I just don't need them like some people do. Some people meaning me, right? He nodded emphatically. My very own Bridget the Midget. You don't get to call me that. You have to call me Bridget the Beautiful. Or Bridget the Brain. Bridget the Brain? She shrugged. I was a nursing major. I tutored science. I kind of like Bridget the Beautiful. It doesn't have the same ring to it as Bridget the Midget, but I can make do. So kind of you. Bridget shook her head. You're not so great for my ego, you know. Why not? I think you're beautiful. I just said that. You think I'm beautiful in a stick me in your pocket and carry me around kind of way. I'm not beautiful, and we both know it. I'm cute. That's it. He laughed. You're beautiful to me. I think you're pretty darn special. She spotted the bakery. Race you to the yummy stuff. She didn't give him any time to prepare and just started running, giving herself a good head start. When she reached the building, she opened the door, completely out of breath and giggling hysterically. Miranda looked startled for a moment, but then she grinned. Bridget. Hi, Miranda. I need my yummies for the day. Kevin walked in behind her, glaring. You cheated. All's fair in desserts and war. Isn't that supposed to be love and war? His voice was low, and he had a silly grin on his face. Bridget shook her head. I don't believe in falling in love in 2 days. Doesn't happen in my world, so it's in dessert and war. Kevin smiled, one finger tracing her cheek softly. You just keep telling yourself that. Bridget tore her gaze from his and walked to the counter, her face red, and her heart racing. Let me see what I want today. It didn't take her long to choose a pineapple upside-down cupcake and a cannoli. Once they were wrapped up, and Kevin had paid for them over her protests, they were on their way. I'll see you tomorrow. Bridget waved as they walked to the stable. Have you ever ridden a four-wheeler? He asked. She nodded. A few times. I'm proficient. Okay, good. Once they had their four-wheelers, they drove to the cafe. He turned to her after they parked on the grass beside the building. I'll get our lunch. I want to come in. I need to see Kelsey. Kevin shrugged, carrying the desserts inside with him. As they walked in, Bridget saw a girl she hadn't met yet talking to Kelsey, who said, We've been keeping it secret, but I have to tell you or I'm going to burst. Kelsey's eyes widened and she squealed, hugging the other girl. Belly bump. She bumped her belly with the woman in front of her, seeming thrilled to be able to do so. Her gaze met Bridget's, and she smiled. This is my sister-in-law, Belinda. She's making a cousin for little Herbert here. She patted her belly with a grin. Herbert? Bridget asked, flinching visibly. She wouldn't really name her baby Herbert, would she? Kelsey grinned. Well, we just found out it's a girl, so probably not Herbert, but I've been trying out different names for her. Herberta, maybe? Bridget shook her head emphatically. Just keep trying. She smiled at Belinda, who looked embarrassed at the idea of being discussed so openly. It's nice to meet you. I'm Kaya's sister, Bridget. Belinda's eyes opened wide and she nodded. Oh. I'm Wyatt's wife. We got married this summer. Wyatt and Glenn worked together. I love your sister. It's nice to meet you. I'm sure I'll see you at the reception on Saturday. Belinda nodded. I wouldn't miss it. She looked back at Kelsey. I'll see you soon. And I'm not sure how I feel about the whole belly bumping thing. Kelsey shrugged. You'll get used to it. The cousins need to get to know one another. Won't that be easier once they're out of the wombs? Never too early. Belinda shook her head and headed out the door, obviously flustered by her sister-in-law's reaction to her pregnancy. We need lunch, Kelsey. To go. Kevin had his hand at the back of Bridget's waist, and Kelsey smiled knowingly. The ranch is bringing another couple together, isn't it? I don't think it's possible to not fall in love here anymore. Bridget had no idea how to respond to that. Oh, stop pretending you're shy. I know better. Bridget sighed. Where'd you get the idea for the belly bump? I met this crazy woman who ran around yelling booby bump and then she'd hug you. This is like the same thing for pregnant women. Kelsey laughed as she efficiently packed a lunch into a box for the two of them. I learned it from your sister, and then I modified it to fit my own needs. If Kaya would hurry up and get pregnant, it would suit me very well. Bridget didn't know how to respond to that. I think they're going to wait. Glenn wants his business more established first. I don't blame him, but I still want Kaya to have a baby near the age of mine. Wouldn't that be so much fun? Kelsey pushed the lunch at Kevin, who paid her at the old-fashioned cash register at the end of the counter. I guess? But people can't just have babies to amuse you. Kelsey shrugged. If only the world revolved around me. Bridget shook her head. We still on for scary movies tonight? Kelsey nodded. Why not? It sounds like fun to me, and the men can amuse themselves somehow. As much as Bridget wanted more time alone with Kevin, she knew that being around other people would help her know him better. Maybe she'd find some really annoying habit, and her feelings would change. A girl could hope, couldn't she?